luscious, delicious, and refreshing mango cheesecake recipe, and without the hassle of baking them. So if you want to learn how to make this recipe, stay tuned here on Macu Baker's channel. Hello there my lovelies, welcome back to another episode of my channel. And previously I taught you how to make your own cream cheese at home, and I promised that I'm gonna give you a recipe using this cream cheese. So here I am to deliver what I promised. So if you're interested, just keep on watching. The list of ingredients is in the description box below. Check it out! Just so you know guys, the ingredient list that I put down in the description box below is I divided it into half because I want to know the difference between the store-bought and the homemade cream cheese. So here I am dividing the biscuits into two groups. I'm supposedly gonna use some graham crackers as said in the ingredient list below, but I don't have any graham crackers at this time, so I use chocolate biscuits. These are Ace. If you're from the Philippines, you're familiar with them. They're used for munchkins. So you can crush them with a rolling pin, but if you have a blender or a food processor, then use that. It's much easier that way. And here I am using my NutriBullet JZ999. So before I start whizzing or blending them in the food processor or blender, whichever you use, I like to pre-break them with my hands just so that the machine won't have a harder time grinding it. But you know, it's not necessary. I'm just kind of a perfectionist. But if you're using the rolling pin, make sure that you really grind it into fine powder so that it's really even, your crust. And also I find that if you don't break them up too finely, you'll find that those bigger lumps tend to separate because they're kind of loose and they're not fine enough to be glued by the melted butter. So here I am using melted butter, pouring them into the biscuit mixture, and I'm letting all the machine do the work here because I'm lazy. Also, as said in the ingredient list, that sugar is optional because graham cracker is not that sweet, while this biscuit that I'm using right now is a bit sweet because it has a sugar coating in it and it's already sweet on its own, so I didn't add in additional sugar. But if you're using graham cracker crust, then add in the indicated amount of sugar for the crust in the ingredient list below. So I'm gonna be using some silicone cupcake molds because it's easier to remove that way because they're flexible and all. But if you don't have them, you can just use a regular cupcake tray. Just use two palette knives or 2 spoons to coax them out of the mold. And make sure they're pretty when they get out because this is gonna be a pretty cheesecake. Now all you have to do now is to put all your crumb crust to the bottom of the molds and then press them with a spoon so that they'll be compressed and they'll be intact when they're frozen and they won't be crumbly. And now for the cheesecake batter itself. So we're gonna start with our mangoes. You need to take one of your mangoes and then slice it and get all of the flesh out, then mash it with a fork so that it's all liquidy and it's easier to incorporate into the batter. Now don't be confused, we're not gonna bake this. I just call it batter because, I don't know, it's kind of awkward to name it a different name. Maybe, okay, let's just call it a mixture. So we're just gonna mix it into the cheesecake mixture for freezing later on. You will now need to whip your cream until it reaches stiff peaks, or when you lift your beater out, it forms a stiff peak. But if you don't have a stand mixer or a hand mixer, you can just use a normal whisk and your arms and a little bit of time. It's gonna be a bit of a workout, but I promise you it'll work. And as I mentioned from earlier in the video that I have this recipe for the test which cream cheese is better or how different it is. So the other bowl is for the homemade cream cheese, and for the other one it's the store-bought cream cheese. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna mix the whipped cream with the cream cheese. So you're gonna have to do it carefully. You don't want to be too aggressive, because if you are, then you will probably lose all the air that you've incorporated into the cream, thus losing the creamy and velvety texture of the cream cheese or the final product. Don't do the same mistake that I did. As you can see, my whipped cream is not fluffy anymore because Philippines is so hot and it melted my whipped cream. So I had no choice. I had to use it because I ran out of cream. But if you're gonna make this at home, make sure that you work in a cool space and don't let your cream melt. Oh, and don't forget to add in your sugar. Oh my gosh, I forgot to say that. Now that our cream cheese base is prepared, our whipped cream, sugar, and cream cheese is mixed, now let's add the flavoring. So we're gonna add in a splash of vanilla. You can find the quantity and the ingredient list below, and also the mashed mango that we sliced and mashed earlier. So it's now time to mix it in carefully again, so that you don't lose all the air bubbles. Not like what I did. I absent-mindedly left the whipped cream out, let it melt, and now it's not fluffy anymore. But it still worked out in the end though. So it's gonna be much better if you do follow my steps carefully and don't do it like me. Don't be stupid like me. Oh my gosh, I hate myself. Now that we're done with our cheesecake batter, it's now time to pour them into the mold. So this recipe will yield you about 6 large cupcake molds. The molds that I use here are not regular sized ones like you would usually use in your cupcakes. So if you're gonna use those regular cupcake ones, then it'll yield you about 12 to 15 cheesecakes, depending on how thick you put your batter into it. So don't overfill it, just fill it about halfway full, because we're still gonna put our mango garnish on top, which will make it look really pretty. And now it's decorating time. So what you're gonna do with the rest of your mangoes is to split them in half. You take out the flesh on the flat sides of the seed, and then you will use those and cut them into strips so that they will be used as mango petals. Well, of course you can decorate this any way you want, but I suggest that you make mango roses because they look absolutely pretty and they don't have to be perfect. Even if they're imperfect, they still look gorgeous. So to assemble the mango rose, all you have to do is to put the mango strips on the edges first of the mold, and then what you do is to, when you put another strip, is to overlap the tail on the head of the first mango strip that you put in. Does that make sense? All you have to do is to overlap each strip, overlap until you reach the center, and it will look like a petal, or it will look like a rose. So basically what you do is you take the strips from the edge, and when you add another strip, overlap the ends together, and then just keep on overlapping as you add more strips until you reach the center of the mold, completing the whole row. So I think it's understandable by the looks of the ones that I made here. And if you have any further confusions and questions about this one, don't hesitate to question me down below in the comments box, and I will try my best to answer them. So here they look. They're really pretty and gorgeous, simple and lovely. So before I take them out of the mold, I just like to put them back in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes just to firm it up and let it set before I actually serve them, because we don't want to destroy that lovely mango rose we just arranged earlier. So I would like to apologize for all the technicalities and errors that I committed in this video, especially the part where I deflated my whipped cream. I'm really sorry for that, but I really do guarantee that this is really delicious and this works if you follow the steps correctly. It's even delicious with the whipped cream gone wrong. This one, it still tasted really good, but it just melted really quick. As you can also notice from this footage here that it's a bit melty, it's melting all over, but don't worry, it's because of the fact that I didn't whip up the cream properly. And if you really want to make sure it's stable, you can add in a teaspoon of gelatin to cold water and then wait for 5 minutes, then melt it and add it to the part where you mix the whipped cream to the cheesecakes. So if you want more details in on that, just read the description box below how to do that. But you can also do this recipe without the gelatin. So if you want with gelatin, just read the description box below. It's really important. And so that's it for today's episode, my lovelies. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. It's really gonna help me a lot. I'm starting out as a content creator, and it's really frustrating if you work so hard in a video and it gets really few engagements. So please share this to your friends. You can also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook. You can like my Facebook page for more updates. So I hope you stay safe at home, and I love you. See you in the next one. Bye! Mwah.